Hey guys, tonight we tiptoe barefoot across the cracked stone floors of ancient Babylon, where oil lamps flicker against soot-smudged walls and every breath tastes faintly of baked clay and incense. You're not here on a noble quest or daring escape. No, you're here because you forgot to return a library tablet. Again. The scriptorium is quiet, save for the scratch of styluses on damp clay and the occasional frustrated sigh from an overworked scribe. Somewhere behind a curtain, someone sneezes, a dry, chalky sound. You consider turning back. But you already passed the point of no return when you missed the tablet deadline by, a month and a half. To your left, a row of stern scribes work under flickering lamplight. Their hair is tied back, brows furrowed in intense focus. One is copying a treaty about barley prices. Another is etching a curse on a tablet that, wait, is that your name on the edge? You inch closer. It's not your name, technically, but the borrowed tablet is definitely the one you took. It's about omens from sheep livers. Fascinating bedtime material, really. And now, someone has started carving something along the lines of whoever steals this tablet, may his crops rot and his teeth fall out one by one. Charming. You try to look casual. Cool. Like someone who meant to bring the tablet back all along. But the mood here is tense. Babylonian scribes, especially those in charge of sacred or state libraries, don't mess around. They're the original gatekeepers of knowledge, and if you return a borrowed text late, you might just find yourself on the wrong end of a stylus, figuratively speaking. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step closer to the central tablet desk, where the chief scribe sits like a high priest of punctuation. He looks up, unimpressed. His beard is immaculate, his robe stiff with starch, and he speaks in a slow, gravelly voice, "You again." It's not the greeting you hoped for. You offer a sheepish smile and place the overdue tablet gently on the desk. The chief scribe examines it like a jeweler appraising a counterfeit gem. "Cracked," he mutters, running a finger along the chipped corner. "And water damage." You begin a clumsy explanation involving a goat, a thunderstorm, and an accidental drop into a cistern. He does not blink. You finish your tale with a nervous chuckle and a hopeful, "but at least it's still legible?" He doesn't respond. Instead, he gestures, and a junior scribe shuffles over with a box of replacement tablets. You're handed a blank one, a stylus, and a half-hour window to recopy the entire thing. Of course you do it. Because Babylonian libraries don't do grace periods. As you sit down and begin scratching careful Akkadian cuneiform symbols into the damp clay, your eyes adjust to the room. Around you, other scribes are engaged in similar acts of slow, deliberate copying. Some tablets are historical records, others are hymnals to forgotten gods. One scribe looks to be writing something poetic, possibly a love letter or a formal complaint about sandals. You overhear a quiet debate at the next desk. Two apprentices are whispering about a rumor. A new tablet has arrived, containing a list of new curses for overdue borrowers. It includes everything from inexplicable hair loss to the sudden attraction of biting insects. Quirky, yes. But in Babylon, people took curses seriously. They weren't just for drama, they were legal, moral, and deeply personal. A borrowed text was sacred, especially when that text included prophecies, medicinal recipes, or state secrets like how many goats the king personally owns. Historians still argue whether Babylonian libraries functioned more like temples or early bureaucratic data centers. They weren't open to the general public in the way we think of modern libraries. Rather, they served scribes, priests, and scholars, most of whom were involved in interpreting omens, managing civic records, or composing hymns. You had to earn your way in. And now, having fumbled your sacred sheep liver loan, you're trying not to get permanently banned. The junior scribe next to you is murmuring as he copies. You catch the phrase, "Let this record be known in the house of life." A poetic way of saying, this tablet will be filed and remembered forever. You glance down at your own work. Your symbols are wobbly, some lines uneven, but you're trying. And that's what counts, right? Just as you finish, the chief scribe looms behind you. He inspects your work in silence. Then slowly he nods. "Barely. You may leave it," he says. "And do not return tomorrow." You're not sure if that means banned for life or just for a day. Either way, it feels like a win. You shuffle toward the exit, past walls lined with clay shelving, each cubby filled with texts wrapped in linen or tied with reeds. Some are tagged with little clay labels, Babylonian library call numbers. You spot one that reads Treatise on Interpreting Bird Entrails, Advanced Level. Riveting. As you step out into the warm night, the sounds of the city return, distant flute music, the clop of hooves, someone shouting about lentils. You're free again. For now. Of course. You still have 2 more tablets under your bed that are technically overdue. But maybe you'll return those next week. Maybe. You trudge back through the narrow alleys of Babylon with the distinct sense that the gods of writing themselves are mildly disappointed in you. The air is thick with the scent of roasted onions, river mud, and faintly, the acrid hint of wet clay drying on your fingers. The stars flicker overhead, those same celestial bodies that inspired half the library's content. And you briefly wonder if they're judging your tablet handling skills too. Let's not dwell. You pass a group of merchants arguing over whether a particular shipment of dates was cursed. One of them gestures wildly with a ledger tablet, shouting, "It rained frogs the same night, Akil." You speed up. Babylon is not a city for the casual listener, and your brain is still humming from the pressure of having to perfectly rewrite ancient sheep liver predictions. By the time you reach your modest reed-walled home, your hands are still sore, but you know deep in your sleep-deprived bones, this isn't over. You've returned the tablet. Yes, but now the library of Ashurbanipal, or at least the Babylonian version of it, has your name. And once a scribe knows your name, your soul might as well be archived next to the royal tax records. It starts innocently enough the next day. A neighbor knocks on your door with a strange smile and a question, "Do you know how to read goat entrails?" You stare blankly. "I heard you've been borrowing the sacred omen tablets. People say you might be training." Training? No. But rumors move fast in Babylon, especially when scribes get bored. And here's the twist. Unlike modern times where overdue books might result in a fine or a polite email, Babylonian library discipline sometimes involved magical retaliation. Not officially, of course. But unofficially? Entire spells were devoted to returning lost items, repelling thieves, and ensuring borrowed knowledge stayed safe. There's even an Akkadian incantation, half curse, half cosmic insurance policy that loosely translates to "let the borrower's house be filled with scorpions should they fail to return what is not theirs." Bit dramatic, but you admire the commitment. Some scholars argue that this was less about punishment and more about the symbolic weight of knowledge. In a society where writing was sacred and the gods themselves were thought to have invented cuneiform, to disrespect a tablet was to disrespect the divine. Historians still debate whether the elaborate curses were taken literally or just served as strong psychological deterrents. Either way, no one took them lightly. You certainly don't. Now you've got 2 options. 1, lie low and hope no one comes asking about those other 2 tablets still hidden under your sleeping mat. Or 2, embark on the world's most bureaucratically terrifying apology tour. You choose neither. You just want a nap. But your dreams are not restful. You're standing in a vast library, taller than the Tower of Babel itself. Shelves stretch skyward, filled with endless clay tablets, each one glowing faintly with magical heat. Behind you, a voice echoes. "You still owe us the herbal remedies for choleric humor compendium." You turn. The chief scribe stands there, eyes glowing like twin lamps, stylus in hand, ready to inscribe your eternal punishment in divine shorthand. You wake up sweating. Naturally. Still, dreams have meaning here. So the next morning, guilt drunk and curiosity piqued, you venture back, not to the scriptorium but to the temple quarter, where sacred tablets are kept behind locked chambers and guarded by priests with eyebrows so stern they could cut stone. Here, late returns are not just frowned upon, they're purified. You overhear a purification ritual in progress. A woman has apparently dropped a medical tablet into a canal. The priest is chanting over her as she pours beer onto a small clay effigy, herself in miniature. "May the gods accept this cleansing," he says, "and may no curse cling to her house. These were returned damaged. We burn them tonight." Then, with a hint of threat, "Unless they're recopied." Of course, recopying. Babylon's most sacred form of penance. So you volunteer. And now, once again, you're back at it, stylus in hand, eyes squinting in the lamplight. painstakingly copying over a fragmentary passage about healing foot boils with ground-up lizard bones and boiled nettle paste. You suppress a gag. Worse than WebMD, you mutter. The priest hears you. He does not smile. A fellow scribe leans over and whispers, some say the gods watch you while you copy. Every stroke recorded. Every smudge judged. Then he winks. But also, sometimes they nap. So you're probably safe. As you scratch out another line, for foot ailments caused by curses of wandering spirits, you begin to understand something deeper. These tablets aren't just books. They're part record, part spell, part diary, part bureaucracy. They're divine, domestic, and political all at once. They hold everything from tax receipts to ghost summoning rituals. Historians are still uncovering the roles these libraries played. Were they proto-universities? Temples? Government archives? All of the above? All you know is, if the gods are watching, you're going to make this the most legible footboil recipe ever inscribed. Hours pass. The temple begins to quiet. The beer ritual finishes. Your clay is set to dry. You step out into the dusk once more, your hands sore but your soul may be clean. And those last 2 overdue tablets? Still under your bed. But tomorrow is another day. You wake up to find your house smelling unmistakably of clay dust and moral compromise. Those 2 tablets are still under your bed. And now they've acquired a psychic weight. Not literal, unless the tablet on agricultural omens is suddenly haunted by the ghost of a displeased turnip, but spiritual. You feel it in your spine. You can't concentrate on breakfast. Your neighbor greets you cheerfully as they string fish to dry, but you barely respond. All you can think about is that second tablet, the one on dream interpretations, the one you were definitely not supposed to remove from temple grounds. You meant to return it. You planned to return it. But like modern humans with their library books or online course logins, intentions don't file themselves. So now you're skulking through back alleys. Tablets wrapped in a reed mat like illicit pastries, heart pounding at the thought of an angry scribe appearing from nowhere, whispering, "We know." And honestly, they probably do. The scribal community in Babylon is tight-knit. Elite, smug, literate, a dangerous combination. They track each other's work, gossip about handwriting, and remember everything. One minor copying error on a Liveroman chart and they will remind you of it until death, or until you write a 500-line apology tablet, whichever comes first. Historians still debate how organized Babylonian libraries actually were. There's evidence of detailed catalog systems, shelf numbers, acquisition dates, ownership seals. Some tablets even had inscriptions that said, essentially, property of the Temple of Nabu, do not steal or misplace, or you will be cursed by 57 minor gods and possibly a squirrel. That last part may be apocryphal, but the intensity stands. Quirky detail for the night? One recovered tablet in Nineveh bears an inscription, whoever removes this tablet without permission. May Shamash and Adad tear out his foundations and destroy his seed. Not quite the Dewey Decimal System, but definitely more memorable. So yes, Babylon cared deeply about where its tablets were and who touched them. And you, dear borrower, have touched too many. You decide it's time for full redemption. Your plan is simple. Return the tablets anonymously, under cover of darkness, maybe wearing a false beard. You even consider borrowing your aunt's old wimple and pretending to be a visiting herbalist from Sapar. You arrive at the temple courtyard just after sunset. The lamps are lit, casting golden halos over the columns. You see a novice priest sweeping clay dust into little piles. You hesitate. Maybe you can sneak the tablets onto one of the offering altars? But then what? Someone finds them, traces the stylus pattern, realizes it was you, finds the faint scent of lentils and shame that follows you everywhere. No, it has to be cleaner. So you go to the head scribe directly. This, of course, is madness. He's known as Belnir, which translates roughly to Lord of Keeping Tabs. He is ancient, possibly made of basalt, and has not blinked since the reign of Hammurabi. His beard is long enough to merit its own annex in the library, and he is staring at you before you even speak. I found these, you say, which is not a lie if you consider the floor under your sleeping mat a spiritual space of discovery. He doesn't speak, just takes the tablets and examines them like a jeweler inspecting a fake gem. He sniffs. He nods once. You copied them? He asks. I skimmed them. He doesn't blink. You understood them? That's a trap. You say nothing. He finally places them on a nearby shelf. where they blend seamlessly into dozens of their kind. And then he smiles. It's not a warm smile. It's the smile of someone who has just added your name to a list. You will return tomorrow, he says. 4. He gestures vaguely at the ceiling. Correction duty. There are many tablets. Some have inconsistencies. Of course they do. You trudge home in the dark again. But this time with a sense of acceptance. You have been absorbed by the Babylonian library complex. You are a cog in a machine powered by clay, reed styluses, and passive-aggressive scribes. And surprise twist, you don't hate it. The next day, correction duty begins. You sit with a stack of duplicate tablets, some of them copied by scribes in training. Others by what can only be described as people with artistic handwriting disorders. You're told to match the characters exactly. Stroke for stroke. No embellishment. You get 2 lines in before you realize someone once wrote goat entrails favorable instead of goat entrails unfavorable, which would have had major implications for that poor sheep-based prophecy. By lunch, you're deep into an argument about whether a particular sign is meant to be field or curse. Context helps, but only so much. The passage in question reads, "Should the liver show a mark like a field/curse, the king will be afflicted by," and here historians still argue. Was the original text implying famine, rebellion, hemorrhoids? You'll never know, but you circle both words and leave it to Belnir. Meanwhile, the temple cat has decided you're her person now. She lounges across your tablet pile, tail flicking dangerously near wet clay. You name her Kisu, which means seal, because she once stepped on a wet tablet and left her own little impression. Belnir did not find that funny. By the end of the week, you've corrected 14 tablets, sharpened 6 styluses, and sprained your left pinky from excessive cuneiform curling. But something inside you shifts. You find a rhythm, a peace. Maybe you weren't cursed. Maybe you were recruited. You leave that day with clay under your nails and a strange sense of purpose. You also borrow a new tablet. Just one. This time you will return it. By now, your fingers have become slightly square from handling too many clay tablets. The calluses on your thumbs are shaping up nicely, badge of honor in the world of Mesopotamian literacy. Most people in Babylon can't even read their own name. You, on the other hand, are now correcting ancient oaths, adjusting meteor omens, and deciphering sentences like, "If the left side of the liver is bulging, the harvest will fail." It's a weird flex, but it's yours. The borrowed tablet, yes, another one is not about dreams or livers or even curses. It's about law, a compilation of temple codes, property disputes, and legal procedures regarding, you guessed it, missing library items. You don't mean to keep spiraling into the subject, but at this point you suspect the tablets are choosing you. The most surprising bit? Babylon had systems. Systems built on trust, shame, and a little bureaucratic flair. If you loaned out a tablet, you etched it in a loan register. If it wasn't returned, your name could end up on a public complaint list, basically a wall of petty grievances carved in stone. One unearthed complaint tablet from the city of Ur records that a man borrowed a manuscript on incantations and failed to return it for over 3 years. When confronted, he claimed it had been eaten by a donkey. Historians still argue whether that's a metaphor or an actual donkey-based accident. The legal text you're holding now describes how ownership seals were applied to borrowed tablets. These weren't just decorative stamps, they were enforceable identifiers. A tablet with your family's seal on it could implicate everyone if it ended up where it shouldn't, which means you've possibly already doomed your third cousins by borrowing from the temple library without a formal request. Congratulations. Your family is cursed by bureaucracy, so you go back. Again. This time, you don't sneak. You walk in like someone who belongs, head high, back straight, tablet under your arm like it's just a casual afternoon read. You find Belnir, who is now eating a fig tart and somehow doing so judgmentally. Without breaking eye contact, you hold out the legal tablet. He gestures to a shelf. You place it carefully, and then, out of nowhere, he waves you forward. "You're ready," he says. You freeze. For what? To copy. Your heart skips. To copy a master tablet is a serious honor. Not just transcribing some junior priest's ramblings about barley storage, but real material. An official draft of a royal letter from the governor of Mari to a Babylonian general. One of the lines reads, "Send 50 jars of beer, or I send 50 heads." Direct. Efficient. Just how you like it. Your first task is to prep the clay. It's soothing work. The right consistency matters. Too dry and it crumbles, too wet and the stylus tears into it like bad handwriting on a banana. You knead it like dough, forming a thick, rectangular pillow. You lay it on a wooden board, pick up your stylus, and begin. The stylus isn't a pen. It's a triangle of sharpened reed, angled just right to press in tiny wedge shapes, cuneiform. From the Latin for wedge-shaped, though no Babylonian ever called it that. They just wrote. The trick is rhythm. Each mark flows into the next. You feel like a music box, your fingers dancing across wet clay. Occasionally, you stop to blow on the surface, dry a corner, or re-wet a stubborn spot. A cat brushes past. A novice scribe mutters a prayer. Outside, bells chime softly for afternoon offerings. Then it happens. You make a mistake. It's small. A flipped symbol. Instead of horse, you've written thirst. In the sentence, send a horse immediately, your version now says send a thirst immediately, which sounds either poetic or threatening depending on tone. You panic. Reach for the correction tool, a sharp-edged shard of bone used to scrape and smooth. But the clay is too dry. The line leaves a scar. You dab it with water. It smears. You try to flatten it out. It wrinkles like a disappointed forehead. Stop, says Belnier. You freeze. He walks over. Examines the mistake. You expect fury. Exile. Maybe a fine. He nods. You have made a mistake. He says. You nod. And you corrected it poorly. You nod again. Good. Now you understand. He walks away. That's it. No punishment. Just the lesson. Mistakes happen. What matters is how you recover and whether your correction still allows the gods to understand the message. Function over form. One fringe theory from scholars. Some of these mistakes were meant to be left in, like divine riddles, a form of intentional ambiguity, letting priests or scribes argue about the meaning and prove their worth. Was this an error? Or was it a test? The Babylonian equivalent of, are you smart enough to know I'm trolling you? It's getting dark now. You've copied almost the full letter. Your hands ache. Your back is stiff. But you feel good, like a piece of something ancient and structured. Like a cog in a very dusty machine. You walk home with ink stains on your forearms and the vague taste of fig tart in your memory. When you pass the reed market, a vendor calls out, "Hey, scholar. Lost another tablet?" You smile and keep walking. That night, you sleep with dreams full of wedge shapes, shifting clay. And the whisper of styluses scratching like tiny chisels into eternity. You wake up before dawn to the smell of warm barley and distant temple bells. Your shoulders are still sore from yesterday's stylus marathons. But there's a kind of satisfaction in the ache. You stretch, crack your knuckles, and make your way back to the temple complex because today you've graduated to a new form of labor, cataloging the collection. Now, before you sigh, understand that this isn't just about putting tablets back on shelves. You're joining the sacred bureaucracy that makes Babylon's intellectual engine hum. The library isn't just a storage space, it's the nervous system of the empire, storing omens, medical remedies, royal decrees, recipes, farming calendars, astrological charts, and, yes, quite a few passive-aggressive curses about those who borrow without returning. And you, lucky you, are now the assistant to the assistant archivist. Your job begins with tablet identification. Each slab of clay has its own features, size, thickness, edge texture, seal impressions, and most crucially, its incipit or first line. Since there were no titles in these days, scribes used the first sentence as a kind of signature. When the moon is low and the ox stumbles, might begin a treatise on lunar harvest omens. If the gods are silent on the second night, is probably an exorcism manual. And to my honored cousin, please send figs is someone's ancient equivalent of an IOU. You're trained to recite the first line aloud and log it into the catalog tablet. The real archivist, a sallow-eyed man named Nabuatur, listens with barely concealed disdain. He corrects your pronunciation mid-recital, slaps your stylus hand when you smudge wet clay, and mutters things like, even the blind goddess Nintanuga would wince at this. Encouraging, really. Today's job: reconcile duplicate entries. Turns out, someone copied a tablet of omens twice. But in one version, the line says, if a dog crosses the temple threshold. And in the other, it's if a wolf crosses, meaning a whole lot of priests have been making entirely different predictions based on whether that scruffy animal was domesticated or not. Historians still argue whether this was a regional variation, a transcription error, or just a long-standing debate between temple factions, Team Dog versus Team Wolf. You get assigned a few broken fragments to decipher. One of them seems to be part of a lost poem about the goddess Inanna's jealous rage over stolen barley beer. Another fragment appears to be an unfinished legal complaint. Something about a neighbor building a chicken coop too close to a sacred fig tree. You realize, with dawning joy, that these people were so deeply, hilariously human. There's even a record of a man requesting compensation for emotional distress after someone accidentally recited a morning chant during his birthday feast. The text ends with a scribe's note. He was given 1 goat and a calming ointment. You dutifully log all these entries into the catalog. 1 stylus stroke at a time. By midday, you're allowed into the deeper stacks, the restricted section. You've never seen so many tablets in one place. Floor-to-ceiling shelves of clay, organized not by title or subject, but by their incipits and the prestige of the scribe who wrote them. You find one attributed to Enlilnir, a legendary scribe whose handwriting is said to have been so precise. It was used as a model for apprentices across the empire. His work is housed in a cedarwood chest wrapped in goat hide, and you are allowed to look but not touch. Touching, Nabuator says, is for those whose hands do not tremble, which would definitely not be you right now. Among the rare texts is one titled by its first line, When the tongue lies, the stars fall. It's a treatise on celestial punishment for perjury. According to its argument, lying under oath could cause visible meteor showers, possibly a poetic flourish. Or maybe the Babylonians had a better grasp on comets than we thought. Or maybe the stars just conveniently fell a lot when court cases got dramatic. One fringe theory? These types of cosmic warnings were deliberately timed with the seasons when meteor activity was most visible. Imagine a temple scribe saying, "You better tell the truth this month. The sky's watching." Ancient peer pressure backed by astrology. You find a particularly fascinating entry. A record of a scribe who borrowed a tablet, returned it late, and carved into the edge a full apology in verse. It reads, "Forgive the clay that bears my guilt. This tablet wandered far afield. I bring it back with hands contrite. May gods and scribes both see it right." It's touching and oddly relatable. You wonder how many tablets you've returned with excuses in your eyes and clay under your nails. Later that evening, as you're logging one final tablet, you stumble across a curious piece. Not a library record, but a satirical play. Yes, Babylon had sketch comedy. This one depicts a scribe who returns a tablet so late that the goddess Nisaba herself descends to demand restitution, only to be bribed with honey cakes and beer. You chuckle. The humor's aged surprisingly well. The day ends with you covered in fine dust, your tunic stained with drying clay, and your cataloging stylus worn to a nub. But you feel like part of something strange and beautiful, a civilization not afraid to mix divinity with detail, cosmic prophecy with a fear of overdue returns. As you step out into the cool night air, a breeze kicks up from the Euphrates. You imagine the gods themselves whispering, "Did he return that tablet on the rituals of goat liver divination?" You hope so. You're pretty sure. Maybe. Okay, probably not. But you'll check again tomorrow. Morning in Babylon tastes like river dust and barley paste. You eat quickly. Because you're headed to one of the most intimidating corners of the scribal universe, the punishment chamber. Okay, not quite as dramatic as it sounds. It's really more of an administrative office. But this is where disputes over missing or damaged tablets go to die or to linger eternally in clay-based bureaucracy. And today you're shadowing the temple dispute scribe. The chamber is dimly lit and smells like incense and sour goat milk. Shelves line the walls, full of complaint tablets. Each one pressed, fired, and stacked like silent screams. You flip through a few. One is a tirade against a careless apprentice who spilled beer on a tablet about liver omens. Another accuses a rival scribe of altering a date on a royal decree to favor his cousin's barley farm. Most are signed in full, "I, Samus Araba, son of no fool. File this in good faith and poor temper." And then there's the overdue tablet complaints. So many. Some are barely legible from where, others practically carved in rage. You meet your mentor for the day, a soft-spoken man named Ilam Nasir. His job? To resolve the endless, petty wars of clay. He leans close to you and whispers, "You must learn 2 things, young stylus. 1, everyone lies. 2, Every tablet tells a different lie. Your first case is already on the docket. A priest named Marduk Belalani claims that he returned a rare astronomical tablet exactly on time. The temple scribe, however, insists it was 3 days late and came back with a suspicious dent in the corner. You hold the tablet under the lamplight. The damage looks minor, but there's a small, etched note on the edge, nearly invisible. It reads, "Returned under protest. Not my fault." It's dated the day after the deadline. Alam Nasir smiles. Ah, the classic passive-aggressive plea. A favorite. The punishment? Not public flogging or imprisonment. Babylonian justice for scribes is almost hilariously niche. Marduk Belalani is sentenced to recite and copy 5 copies of the damaged tablet by hand, under supervision, and deliver honey cakes to the library priest as a peace offering. A sweet sentence. Literally. The logic behind these penalties is ancient but practical. Copying a tablet isn't just laborious. It's a kind of intellectual restitution. You damage wisdom, you pay with effort. And pastries. Historians still argue whether this system was more symbolic than punitive. Some think the honey cakes mattered more than the actual tablets. After all, what's knowledge without a little sugar? Your next dispute is stranger. A farmer's son borrowed a tablet on crop rotations and returned it with extra lines added. Practical advice, apparently, that his father swore by. The additions include things like plant beans only when the sheep sleep facing north, and if your neighbor watches too long, the lentils will rot. Scholars today call this folk interpolation unauthorized updates by enthusiastic borrowers. Technically illegal, but sometimes accurate. You and Alam Nasir debate it. On one hand, it corrupts the original text. On the other, it adds a glimpse into lived experience. Ultimately, the ruling is delicate. The boy must create a new tablet labeled Supplementary Observations and clearly mark it as non-canonical. It's like adding a sticky note to an encyclopedia that says, "My uncle swears this works." In the afternoon, you attend a tribunal, a rare formal session where multiple complaints are heard in public. A young woman named Inatum is being grilled over a missing medical tablet. She claims it was stolen from her home during a dust storm. A neighbor accuses her of hiding it because the cure inside didn't work. There's real tension here. Healing tablets were incredibly valuable, sometimes literally life or death. The tribunal listens as witnesses speak, including an older healer who says Inatum's brother did, in fact, survive the fever. In a twist worthy of modern courtroom drama, the missing tablet is found halfway through the proceedings, lodged between 2 larger ones on the temple shelves, misfiled due to smeared incipit lines. Everyone breathes a collective sigh of relief. Inatum is cleared. Her neighbor is fined a small goat for false accusation and made to apologize with ceremonial figs. But Alam Nasir shakes his head afterward. A missing tablet is never just a missing tablet. It's always a question of who gets to tell the story. By the time the sun sets, you're exhausted. Not from walking or lifting, but from listening. You never realized how much gossip, rivalry, fear, and pride lived within a simple block of clay, and how easily that could turn into centuries of confusion for future historians. One complaint file stands out. A woman named Tash Metanaden insists that she returned a tablet, but the library priest is too distracted by his doves to notice. She writes, "His birds sing, but his records do not. May his feathers fall like unbaked clay." Poetic, bitter, and oddly personal. You wonder how many clay tablets carried not just laws or myths, but little slices of sarcasm. There's something eternal in that. As you leave the chamber, you glance back at the shelves of complaints. Thousands of them still unresolved. You imagine a cosmic scribe recording each of those disputes in some divine library. You hope they filed the one about the stolen goat cheese recipe correctly. That one got heated. By now, you're starting to realize that Babylonian library culture isn't so different from your own late-night bookstore runs or squabbles over borrowed books. Sure, it's made of clay and the stakes involve honey cakes and goat fines, but the human element, petty, proud, and occasionally poetic, hasn't changed much in 4,000 years. Today, you're headed into the copying chambers where the magic and madness of scribal replication happens. This is where worn tablets are preserved by being recarved, new knowledge is committed to clay, and, most dangerously, where errors are introduced. You walk in quietly. The air here is thick with silence and dust, like stepping into the lungs of a sleeping god. Rows of young scribes, all hunched in the candlelight, scrape styluses across fresh tablets. Every now and then one groans softly, not from pain, but from making a mistake. There's no erasing in clay. Every correction requires starting over. Your task today: observe a master scribe named Bel-Nasir, whose specialty is recopying sacred texts with perfect fidelity. He greets you without looking up and gestures to a stool beside him. No questions, just eyes. You watch as he copies a hymnal to Ishtar line by line, symbol by symbol. His hands move with terrifying precision. Then, on the 6th line, he stops. A single cuneiform wedge has broken off in the original. Missing, he murmurs. But context suggests it is the word radiant. Then he hesitates, adds a dot instead. Let the next generation decide, he says. Historians still argue whether these editorial moments were acts of hubris or humility. Some believe scribes should have never inserted guesses. Others admire their transparency. Either way, it shows a deep awareness that history is fragile. One misstroke can ripple across millennia. Bel-Nasir allows you to try copying a tablet fragment. It's a proverb collection, light reading. You squint at a half-faded line, he who bribes the ox, you pause. That can't be right. The rest is smeared. You write, he who bribes the ox will find no plow. It sounds wise. Maybe too wise. Bel-Nasir peers over. You invented that, didn't you? You nod sheepishly. He sighs. Congratulations. You're now part of the long, proud tradition of scribal improvisation. This is how false proverbs are born, creative insertions that get mistaken for ancient wisdom. Scholars today spend lifetimes tracing these anomalies. One such phrase, "the moon weeps for idle scribes," was likely made up by a bored apprentice, and yet it's been cited in dozens of academic papers as authentic Sumerian insight. Midway through the day, you're called to help with a triage case, a broken tablet, damaged in transport containing a royal genealogy. Half the names are gone. A team of 3 scribes gathers like surgeons over a clay patient. One reads what remains. Another proposes the likely sequence based on lineage charts. The third disagrees, citing a rival source. The debate gets heated. Eventually, a consensus is reached. But it's uneasy. They mark the repaired tablet with a special seal, a dragon's eye. It means restored with inference. Future readers will know this isn't gospel truth, it's a scholarly best guess. And just like that, you understand something profound. Babylonian knowledge wasn't just preserved, it was curated, interpreted, layered with context, assumptions, and the fingerprints of anxious humans doing their best to outwit time. During your lunch break, flatbread and pickled onion, you sit by the Euphrates. Thinking. You imagine someone centuries from now trying to make sense of your tablet. Will they understand your scribbled marginalia? The jokes you carved in the corner? The typo you never fixed? One of your favorite tablets in the library is barely read by others. It's a list of absurd trade agreements, probably satire. It includes a clause, if the fishmonger delivers a goat, and the goatherd delivers a fish, both shall eat facing away from the sun. You show it to Bel-Nasir. He reads it with a raised eyebrow. Either a genius or a drunk. You nod solemnly. Maybe both. Later, you return to the copying chamber and see a commotion. A tablet has been discovered with overlapping lines, text upon text, as if 2 scribes copied different works onto the same slab. It's a mess, and yet oddly beautiful. One layer is a children's lullaby. The other is a legal code. As they decipher it, a pattern emerges. The lullaby lyrics line up almost rhythmically with the laws. It's a cosmic accident, but one that sounds like poetry. One scribe jokes, the gods remix us when we're not looking. By dusk, you're dragging your feet. Your hands ache. Your eyes are lined with the ghost shapes of cuneiform. And yet, you feel giddy. Not because of what you copied, but because of what might have slipped in when you weren't looking. A hesitation. A guess. A smirk carved in clay. In the final minutes, Bel-Nasir gives you a test. He hands you 2 nearly identical tablets. One is authentic, the other a forgery. Can you tell? You study them closely. Same symbols. Same layout. But on the second, a tiny deviation, one deity's name is stylized, not formal. You point. Bel-Nasir nods. Good. You'll make a fine liar one day. You blink. Liar. He chuckles. Every scribe lies a little. The best ones leave a trail. As you leave, you remember the forged proverb you made up earlier. You wonder if someone will read it in 2,000 years and nod wisely. Ah yes, the bribe docs. You smile. Maybe you're part of the myth now too. When you return the next morning, the library smells faintly of burnt frankincense and wet clay, like a temple that's just wept. A scribe with a cracked tablet under his arm grumbles past you, muttering about a worm infestation in the archives. You're too sleepy to register whether he's joking. Today, you're being assigned to the most glamorous of Babylonian library tasks. Reshelving. Yes, despite all the wisdom and war poetry, someone still has to put everything back where it belongs. And in a library of thousands of fragile, look-alike clay rectangles, that's, well, a job requiring divine patience and calloused fingers. You're given a waxed linen apron, a cart with wooden slats, and a checklist that looks like it was written during a lunar eclipse. You were told, quite sternly, not to mix temple hymns with omen tablets, and never, under pain of goat confiscation, to store astronomy logs near courtship rituals. They interfere with each other. No one explains how. Your first stop is the Dream Omens Chamber. This section is particularly well-trafficked by priests and the occasional nervous merchant. The tablets here record thousands of dream scenarios and their likely interpretations. You read a few as you work. If one dreams of snakes weaving baskets, the harvest will fail. If the moon speaks plainly, avoid legal matters. If you eat figs in the dark, you will soon see your enemies back. It's all strangely comforting, like horoscopes carved in stone. You wonder if any of these were ever weaponized. Did someone fake a dream about their rivals' bad omens just to ruin their week? Historians still argue whether these dream omen collections were sincerely used for divine insight or simply tools of soft psychological warfare. You place a cracked slab back into its cubby. The shelf is labeled Domestic Visions, Volume 2. It's between irrational fears and post-drought anxieties. You wonder who got to name these categories. Then comes the real fun. Tablets with missing index markings. These were usually tagged with a small corner symbol, an author glyph or subject seal, but sometimes that eroded or never got carved. So now it's up to you to reverse engineer the topic. You read one aloud. The oxen fell, and the river continued to rise. Weather report? Omen? Or early climate change complaint? You flip it over. The back reads, Inventory, temple livestock losses due to swelling. Bingo. Administrative. You reshelve it between tax logs and weather omens. This detective work starts to feel addictive. One fragment contains only 2 lines. She laughed in the orchard. The figs were gone. You want it to be poetry, but it turns out to be a theft report. You sigh. Art is subjective, after all. As you roll your cart deeper into the maze, the architecture starts to change. Ceilings lower, and the shelves shift from orderly to chaotic. This is the private stash zone, works not officially cataloged. Here, the scribes kept drafts, banned texts, and oddities that didn't fit anywhere else. You find a slab covered in childish handwriting. A practice piece. It reads, The sun sees all, even what it wishes it didn't. There's a doodle of a goat, and a rather crude rendering of what you think is a bearded man slipping on a wet brick. You laugh, then hide it behind a stack of court records. Let someone else find it centuries later and declare it early satire. At one point, you're joined by a senior librarian named Echerim, who claims he once cataloged 400 omen tablets in a single day. Didn't even pee, he adds with a grin. He shows you the compromise corner where scholars often parked disputed works. One is titled Calendar of the 10th Month, but it references a feast that never existed. Some say it was a prank, Echerim shrugs. Others say it's proof of a lost timekeeping system. You stare at the slab. The month's name? Chatterbird. You kind of love it. As you continue, you notice something odd. Certain tablets have small nail marks at the corners as if someone tried to hang them. You ask Echerim. Wall copies, he says. Popular texts. People wanted to show them off at home. You can't help but chuckle. The Babylonian version of motivational posters. Hang in there, but with more oxen and divine wrath. One slab simply reads, Do not marry your cousin, unless she has grain. You stare at it for a moment. Debates still rage today about how much grain is enough to justify certain choices. Toward the end of the day, you're sent to reshelve a highly controversial tablet. A treatise arguing that clay is not the optimal medium for eternal wisdom. Its author, Talma Kenai, believed future civilizations would invent superior materials, possibly even invisible writing carried by wind or light. He proposed creating a backup archive in song form to be passed down orally. Most of his ideas were dismissed as lunatic fantasy, but one line stays with you. One day, the sky itself may carry our words. You glance up toward the dusty rafters. There's a spider up there spinning a web between two scroll racks. You wonder what it's archiving. As your shift ends, Etram claps you on the back. You've got a good eye. And a better nose. You didn't reshelve the fish taxes next to the incense logs. He hands you a token, etched with a stylized feather. Official reshelver, it says. It's not glamorous, but it's a role in the story now. And as you roll your empty cart past the final row, you glimpse a tablet left atop a shelf, unlabeled. You pick it up. It's blank, no text. Just a perfectly smooth clay face. Your reflection stares back faintly in its curve. You smile. Some stories are waiting to be written. You wake the next day to the sound of squabbling donkeys and the smell of wet reeds. Your body aches in new places thanks to yesterday's marathon reshelving session. But you're officially part of the system now. The library gods, or more likely, Etram, have assigned you to the archives of retribution. You're not quite sure what that means until you see the sign carved above the entrance. Tablets in violation. Apparently, even in ancient Babylon. Someone had to deal with the people who never brought their library books, tablets, back on time. The space is dimmer than the rest of the library. Its shelves lined with clay documents covered in angry script and official seals. You trace your finger along the spine of one. The cuneiform characters are especially sharp, like the scribe was jabbing the stylus in frustration. Etram follows behind you, smirking. This is where we track delinquents, he says. The worst offenders. Years overdue. Some of them forgot. Some refused. One guy tried to eat his tablet to destroy the evidence. You blink. Did it work? He shrugs. Let's just say he spent the next few weeks writing apology tablets from a very confined chamber. This place is, quite literally, the Babylonian equivalent of a dusty drawer full of late fees and broken dreams. You sit down to examine a few cases. One tablet is marked with a red triangle and old disciplinary symbol. The text reads, To Enlil of the Outer Quarter, return she-goat taxation, Volume 3, within 3 lunar days or pay in grain. Delay beyond 10 days will summon judgment. The back is signed and sealed not by a librarian but by a temple scribe of civic law. Evidently, overdue books were not just an inconvenience, they could trigger legal proceedings. Historians still argue whether these notices had genuine legal weight, or if they were more like bureaucratic scare tactics. Either way, the language is impressively ominous. Another case involves a student who borrowed 6 tablets on star navigation and vanished. According to the record, his last known location was a reed boat headed toward Dilmun. No one ever found him or the star maps. Some say he defected to rival astronomers. Others suggest he got lost reading about constellations and never looked up again. Quirky fact. The phrase for late return in Babylonian legal shorthand was the same as unripe fig. So if you were overdue, your record might simply say, He is as the fig in shadows. You read another entry aloud. Eshuna, son of Marek, delayed return of hymns to the brick kiln by 43 days. Claimed he was studying them under moonlight. Penalty enforced, 1 duck. Yes, duck fines. In fact, fines could range from grain to livestock to manual labor. You once again feel lucky your own job just involves sleeving dusty clay. Etram points out a wall rack titled Serial Offenders. These are people who didn't just forget, they developed a pattern. One name shows up 14 times. Tanalga the borrower. He returned only 2 of his 28 tablets on time. His defense? They spoke to me, so I kept listening. You chuckle. That sounds like something a modern audiobook junkie would say. Sorry. I couldn't return it, the narrator was too good. What's more baffling, one entry notes that Tanalga carved his own reviews onto the backs of the tablets. One reads, Too many references to barley. Ending abrupt. 3 stars. You start to wonder whether Tanalgu was a delinquent or a proto-critic. Etram hands you a tool, a reed stylus with a blunted tip. Go ahead, he says. Today you help write a late return notice. You're handed a fresh, wet tablet. The name is already carved Ilitmesh. A fisherman who borrowed a hymnal to the goddess Ninsun and returned it with fish scales stuck to the edges. And also a bite mark. You squint. Was that intentional? No idea, Etcherim says. But we're not taking chances. Draft the penalty as if he's planning to chew the next one too. You carefully write. To Ilitmesh. You have returned the sacred songs of Ninsun in unacceptable condition. May the fish you catch grow legs and mock you on shore. Bring forth 2 clean tablets and an offering of smoked carp to atone. Etcherim peers over your shoulder and nods. Poetic. A bit harsh on the fish, but poetic. Later that day, you attend a delinquency tribunal. Which sounds fancier than it is. It's just 3 old scribes sitting in a semicircle, arguing about what counts as a real excuse. A young man pleads that his camel ate his tablet. Another claims a priest borrowed it without asking. One just shrugs and says, I forgot. Shockingly, that honesty gets him the lightest punishment, a brief temple cleanup shift and a strongly worded note etched in duplicate. Etcherim leans over to whisper, we respect a man who admits incompetence. Just not one who blames it on divine intervention. The tribunal adjourns and the scribes gather around a jug of date beer. You realize these meetings are as much about social ritual as they are about justice. The line between bureaucracy and bedtime gossip is thin in Babylon. You're shown one final artifact, a massive stone slab known as the Library Edict of Ashurbanipal. While technically Assyrian, the Babylonian scribes keep a replica because it outlines the sanctity of knowledge and includes a curse. Whosoever removes this tablet or fails to return it shall be forgotten by the gods. His name lost and his teeth turned to sand. Now that's a late fee. As the day ends, you help restack the violation tablets into their appropriate severity bins. Mild offenses, dust smudges. Late by 1 to 3 days. Moderate. Misplacement. Annotations and margin. Late over 10 days. Grave. Tablet damage. Inappropriate uses. One was used as a dinner plate. Non-return over 30 days. Unforgivable, theft, defacement, or lending to foreigners. You ask if anyone has ever returned a tablet from the unforgivable tier. Etcherim nods. Once. A scroll went missing for 60 years. Turned up in a merchant's bundle from Elam. Covered in oil, but intact. What happened? The merchant was fined. The tablet was cleaned. And the whole story was carved into the side of a temple staircase. Because in Babylon, everything, even a library mishap, was worthy of immortality. You wake to a rhythmic tapping, stylus on clay. Stylus on clay. Etcherim's already working, as usual, looking far too cheerful for someone surrounded by complaints and return notices. He motions you over with a grin and says, big day. You're going out. You blink, groggy. Out? As in, not in here. Apparently, there's another side to Babylon's library system, the retrieval division. When borrowers don't return tablets and don't respond to written summons, the library sends a retrieval officer to knock on their door and, gently but firmly, ask for the book back. You get paired with a senior retriever named Beldanu, a wiry man with a limp, an iron stylus, and the air of someone who's been lied to by every kind of citizen imaginable. Call me Bell, he says, slipping a sealed clay tablet into his satchel. We're tracking a 3-month delinquent. A fishmonger. Of course it's a fishmonger. You seem cursed to live among scales and brine. The sun hits hard as you and Bell make your way through Babylon's crowded alleys. The smell of garlic, fried onions, and livestock hits you first. Then the heat. Then the dust. You keep adjusting your robe, trying to find a combination of sleeves and shade that doesn't make you sweat. Bell leads with confidence, elbowing past stalls selling spices, dried figs, scrolls, even cheap knockoff amulets that promise protection from library curses. You pass a vendor with a sign that reads, "Returned your tablet? Celebrate with a lamb skewer." Apparently, even food sellers get in on the late return economy. Bell finally stops at a modest hut near the river just behind the fish market. He knocks once, hard, then again, softer. Always let them hear the warning, then the mercy, he mutters. The door creaks open, revealing a short woman with a skeptical eyebrow. He's not here. We're here for the tablet, Bell says. Not even blinking. Not your husband. He's not here with the tablet either. Bell sighs and gestures for you to step forward. You nervously hold up the notice you carved earlier. The woman takes it, squints, then snorts. He used it to press garlic last week. There's a pause. You and Bell exchange looks. This might be a Class 2 violation. She must read your expressions because she suddenly calls out, Yashu. Get the pressing stone. A sheepish man appears behind her, holding what used to be a detailed copy of Sacred Markets of Ishtar. Now it smells like soup and regret. Historians still argue whether borrowers actually understood the sacredness of library materials. Bell says to you, loud enough for the couple to hear. Some scholars believe many saw tablets as common objects, not realizing they were part of a larger civic trust. He pockets the ruined tablet, hands the couple a form to sign, acknowledgement of damage and a promise to attend library rehabilitation, and walks away without another word. You hurry after him. Rehabilitation? Oh, yes, he says. Weekly sessions where offenders recopy lost texts by hand, while listening to a lecture on the divine nature of recorded knowledge. Is that effective? About as much as you'd expect. One guy kept falling asleep on his stylus, left cuneiform bruises all over his face. You stop for lunch at a noodle stall tucked between a scribal guild and a bakery. As you slurp, Bell pulls out a tiny roll of wax parchment, the Babylonian version of a to-do list. He reads the next name. Ah, this one's fun. A weaver who borrowed patterns of divine weft and claims it inspired her to create unholy cloth. You pause mid-slurp. Unholy how? She says the fabric whispers. Right? Of course it does. The weaver's house is draped in shimmering veils that shimmer oddly in the breeze, probably because they're woven with metallic thread and not because they're sentient, but at this point, you're not betting on anything. The weaver opens the door with a dramatic flourish. I have become the book, she says. It's in me. Bell crosses his arms. Ma'am, we still need the tablet. I fed it to my loom, she says. You blink. I don't think looms eat. She ushers you inside. The room is buzzing. The loom in the corner is wrapped in cloth that glints like a beetle's back. On closer inspection, yes, the tablet has been ground up and mixed into the dye. You back away slowly. Bell just sighs. This'll be paperwork. He writes up a report on the spot. Hands her a notice for disciplinary weaving suspension, yes, that's a thing, and makes a small mark in his wax book, a tiny fishbone-shaped glyph. Level 3, Artistic Devotion. You walk back to the archive through the back alleys of Babylon, the sky darkening. People are lighting lanterns in windows and temple bells are sounding the twilight prayers. A dog follows you for half a block, then vanishes. Ever retrieved one without drama? You ask. Bell chuckles. Once, a little boy returned a tablet he'd been using to balance a wobbly stool. Apologized. Gave me a figure. That's the dream. Back at the library, Etram's waiting with a cup of tamarind water. He listens as you recount the fishmonger, the weaver, and the talking cloth. He smiles and says, now you know why we keep so many backup copies. As you shelve the fish garlic tablet into the damaged beyond restoration bin, you spot something odd, a small, chipped fragment with 3 words. Borrower forgave lender. No name, no context. Just that. You ask Etram about it. He shrugs. Some tablets aren't for knowledge. They're just reminders. You hold the shard in your hand a moment longer before setting it down gently. Then you roll out your mat and let the library's silence wrap around you like a cool linen sheet. The retrievals are done for today. You wake before dawn this time, not because of the roosters or the temple bells, but because Etram is already sweeping. His sweeping is not exactly gentle. It's the kind of enthusiastic bristle on stone that says, today will be unusually bureaucratic. You rub your eyes. What is it? He answers without looking up. Audit day. 2 words. 1 heart-sinking. Library audit days in Babylon are rare, dramatic, and universally feared. Every tablet must be accounted for. Every borrower's name rechecked. Every misfiled text, duplicate entry, and even half-etched wedge is summoned from the archives like ghosts from clay. You spend the morning reshelving misplaced astronomy texts. There's a whole section of star charts that someone alphabetized by constellation name rather than observation date. That someone was probably you. Oops. Why do we do this every year? You ask Etram, balancing a stack of lunar eclipse records. He doesn't miss a beat. Because people lie, tablets disappear, and if we don't keep track, someone might recopy the flood story using recipes for pickled fish. Touché. Today's audit is led by a man called High Scribe Kishbalu, who wears a robe so starched it could scratch pottery. He has a voice like sandpaper and a zero-tolerance policy for anything remotely human. You hear him berating a junior scribe for using the wrong kind of reed stylus. Do these markings look like they came from a level 2 cut? This is a level 1 text. Even Etram winces. Your job is to assist the audit assistant, a woman named Ninsabta who is known for her memory, her penmanship, and her absolute refusal to laugh at jokes. She hands you a tablet labeled Borrower Tallies, 5th to 7th Reigns. She says cross-check. Each name, each symbol, each wedge. Do not skip a single line. You're 90 names in before your eyes start crossing. Most entries are uneventful. Returned, paid fine, transferred, cleared. But then one stands out. Borrower 711A. Status. Banned. Returned. No. Action. Imprisoned. You tap the clay. Wait, people could go to prison over late books? Ninsabta leans over unamused. Only when they steal them. Or alter them. Alter? Etram walks by and sees what you're looking at. Ah. Yes. That one. He lowers his voice. Story goes, they borrowed a copy of the hymns to Shamash, added their own stanzas. Then returned it like nothing happened. Improvised theology? Exactly. Claimed the sun god was also the god of barley storage. Said it came to them in a dream. You glance around. Is that the worst anyone's done? Etram grins. Not even close. Once, a nobleman borrowed a treaty from the foreign affairs shelf, changed a single wedge, turned peace into war. Nearly caused a border conflict. He blamed his assistant. Historians still argue whether that assistant was real, Ninsabta adds, flipping a reference slab. Some say it was a political scapegoat. Others believe he actually existed but fled to Assyria. The deeper you dig into the audit logs, the stranger things get. There's a noblewoman who insisted on returning tablets sealed in beeswax to preserve the contents. Spoiler, it did not preserve the contents. A merchant who returned a debt record rewritten to say his name was the creditor. Even a priest who smuggled a romantic poem into a tablet meant for funerary rites. That one caused quite a scene when it was read aloud at a temple. Why do people do this? You mutter. Etram shrugs. Power, pride, boredom. The usual. But the truth is tablets outlast lies. Eventually someone finds the original. Sometimes, though, original copies vanish. Entire works go missing, never to be recovered. That's when the library calls in the curatorial inquisition. A group of elite scribes trained to track missing texts across city-states. Yes, Ninsabta says, not looking up. They wear black. They carry measuring cords. And they will absolutely search your goats for contraband cuneiform. You stare at her. She's not joking. Around midday, you get summoned to the central record hall, where High Scribe Kishbalu is inspecting the obsidian ledger, an enormous tablet listing every work ever known to exist in Babylon's holdings. He barks at you, read line 72, column 5. You do. It's a treatise on canal maintenance from the 3rd dynasty. Now retrieve it, he says. You nod and head for the engineering shelf, only to find a suspiciously empty slot. You panic. You return and report. It's not there. Silence falls. Etram steps up, clearing his throat. We loaned it last week, sir, to the Department of Aqueduct Affairs. Kishbalu arches a brow. Do they have a copy slip? Etram smiles. Of course. Triplicate. Crisis averted. For now. You realize something strange. This whole system, the fines, the forms, the styluses, the retrievals, the audits, it's not just about books. It's about Babylon holding itself accountable through clay and ink and calloused fingers. It's about memory and memory's tendency to wander, twist, and get creative if left unchecked. You finish your last checkmark just as the sun begins to set, casting amber light through the high windows. Audit day concludes. Kishbala signs off with a grunt and vanishes into the archive mists like some kind of ancient data vampire. You collapse onto a stack of wool cushions, hands still twitching from stylus cramps. Etram sits beside you. Not bad, he says. You only missed 3 glyphs. That's a new apprentice record. You're too tired to answer. But deep down, you're proud. You're now officially part of Babylon's memory-keeping machine. Even if your handwriting still looks like chicken scratch. You wake to the clatter of a bronze tray and the scent of dates soaked in honey, Etram's peace offering after yesterday's audit ordeal. He gestures to the pile of tablets by the doorway. We have an assignment. You groan. Please don't say royal request. It's worse, he replies. It's a high priest request. Cue a long sigh from you. Requests from temple officials are never simple. They're always phrased like riddles, delivered with terrifying politeness, and come wrapped in layers of ceremonial red tape. This one? It's from the temple of Nabu, god of wisdom, writing, and occasional dramatic lighting strikes when angry. Your task: verify the authorship of a suspicious prayer tablet recently donated to the temple archives. The twist? The text is allegedly authored by a long-dead royal scribe, one who, according to every timeline and temple record, died before the prayer was supposedly written. Historians still argue whether it's a forgery, a misdated copy, or an actual case of ghostwriting. Etram mutters, flipping open the clay cover. You squint at the first few lines. It's in the high script, you note. Barely anyone writes like this anymore. High script was reserved for divine communications, its loops and flourishes both beautiful and maddeningly hard to replicate. Forging it is like trying to fake Shakespeare's signature using only a fork. You're sent to the upper scriptorium, a hushed chamber that smells like incense and old ambition. There you meet Iltani, a specialist in paleoclayography. Yes, that's a real word, and yes, she insists on using it. Her job is to identify writing styles based on wedge angle, clay pressure, and, occasionally, whether the writer liked to snack mid-sentence. You'd be surprised how often fingerprints contain honey residue. Iltani takes one glance at the tablet and frowns. Something's off. You ask, what? The glyphs. No, she replies. The rhythm. See, cuneiform isn't just writing. It has cadence. Ancient scribes tapped out verses to match ritual chants. Deviations in spacing or emphasis often meant the writer was either untrained or intentionally trying to mask their identity. Look here, she says, pointing to a line. This symbol for blessing is flattened. That's a northern technique. But this prayer was supposedly written in Uruk. You're about to comment when Etram returns, carrying a comparative tablet. This is an authenticated piece from the same scribe, dated 20 years earlier. You compare the two. They're close, eerily close, but like two actors playing the same role with slightly different accents. There's no doubt, Iltani concludes. Someone copied his style. And not badly. Motivation? You ask. Etram shrugs. Could be anything. Temple politics. Someone trying to prove a vision. Maybe they just wanted the glory of inventing a new chant. You look around the scriptorium. Dusty scrolls. Old ink. The faint rustle of reeds in the breeze. A world of sacred forgeries and devotional ambition. The three of you bring your findings to the temple of Nabu. The priest in charge, a gaunt man named Shuduru, listens silently. His eyes don't blink nearly enough. When you finish your presentation, he nods once and says, the prayer shall remain on display. But we will add a footnote. You blink. A footnote. Yes. Attribution debated among scribal scholars. He pauses. It's the polite way of saying we think it's fake. But we still like the message. Temple logic. As you leave, Etram whispers, that's how Babylon handles inconvenient truths. Footnotes. Later, over dinner, you reflect on how fragile historical truth really is. One stylus slip, one forged tablet, one conveniently placed religious epiphany, and centuries later, people argue over what actually happened. People don't want facts. Etram muses, cracking a pistachio. They want stories that make sense, even if they have to bend clay to make them fit. He's right. And Babylon, brilliant, dusty, bureaucratic Babylon isn't just a city of records. It's a city of edits, rewrites, and clay-based spin control. Case in point, Etram once changed the date on his tax receipt so he wouldn't get fined. Didn't work, he admits. Turns out the goddess of commerce has excellent memory. That night, as you organize the latest batch of contested texts, you stumble across a curious entry. Return delayed due to lunar omen. Apparently, someone blamed a full moon for not returning their hymnal on time. Claimed the light interfered with their dream interpretation schedule. Classic. Another note reads, tablet loan to brother-in-law, outcome uncertain. And another, returned via third-party courier, may have been intercepted by Akkadian goat thief. Every excuse etched permanently into history. No edits. No deletions. Just an eternal parade of very human mishaps dressed in divine-sounding formality. You close the last entry for the night and extinguish your oil lamp. Outside, the moon is high, the city quiet, and the gods presumably still monitoring late returns. You roll over, wondering if somewhere in the archives there's a tablet accusing you of scribal smudging. There probably is. You'll file a footnote. You're deep into a sluggish afternoon nap, dreaming of a library entirely made of pillows when Etram yanks open the curtain, wide-eyed and holding what looks like a half-melted wax tablet. "We've got a problem," he announces. You sit up groggily. Is it another forged hymn? Worse, he says. It's a royal summons. Those 3 words have the same effect as cold river water down your back. Apparently, the Crown Prince, yes, that one, is demanding a full audit of all library holdings connected to his ancestry. Why? Because someone at a feast claimed the prince's great-grandfather plagiarized a treaty oath. Now he wants clarity. And proof. And preferably no embarrassing surprises. The palace is sending scribal liaisons, officials from the Genealogy Guild, and even an astrologer because, of course, there must be cosmic context for everything. When the team arrives, it's a walking bureaucracy. Scroll carriers, sandal polishers, and one man whose only job appears to be tableau arranger. The lead liaison is a fast-talking woman named Zamira, whose bracelet clinks every time she makes a point, which is always. We'll need all treaties, oaths, temple pacts, and dinner invitations from the year of the crooked bull onward, she says. And please, no clay rot. You nod politely, then whisper to Etram, what in Naba's name is clay rot? It's what they call tablets stored too close to goat pens. Absorbs the stench. Scholars get cranky. The search begins. You and Etram wade through record layers like time archaeologists, each tablet a potential scandal. Turns out the prince's family history is a tapestry of awkward alliances, failed crops, and one very unfortunate hunting accident involving a sacred ibex. Historians still argue whether that ibex incident was an omen or just bad aim, Etram mutters. One record catches your eye. A pact between the prince's ancestor and the ruler of a rival city-state. The language is formal, but there's a subtle echo of an earlier oath you've seen. Almost word for word. You find the match in the archives, a temple treaty written decades earlier by a lesser-known scribe named Belilu. You bring both tablets to Zamira, who frowns. This could look awkward, she says. But perhaps we simply label the earlier oath as a source of inspiration. Not plagiarism? We don't use that word here. Instead, a statement is drafted. This passage reflects the enduring traditions of intercity diplomacy, showing remarkable consistency over generations. In other words, yes, we copied it, but we did it honorably. Still, the deeper you dig, the stranger it gets. You find marginal notes in some treaties, scratched in with obvious haste, that reference omens, food shortages, and celestial weather patterns. One treaty is delayed because the moon was too angry. Another nearly cancelled over mistranslated goat entrails. At one point, Etram reads aloud, treaty postponed due to astrologer's rash. You glance up. You're making that up. He flips the tablet to show you. It's there. Clay doesn't lie. Of course, the prince never actually reads these records himself. He schemes the summary tablets, carefully curated and edited by Zamira's team to ensure nobody loses a feast invitation or a border fortress. After 3 days of review, the final scroll is presented, embossed in gold leaf and bound in perfumed cedar. It declares, the royal line of anointed harmony has upheld the values of truth, piety, and strategic negotiation across all epochs. You turn to Etram. Strategic negotiation? New euphemism for stealing an oath and adding goats. The prince, pleased with the summary, grants the library an honorary title, Guardians of Royal Echo. It sounds noble. It mostly means you now have to host future document audits. As the royal retinue leaves, a junior clerk from the Genealogy Guild pulls you aside. You ever wonder, he says, how many royal stories are based on footnotes and flattery? All the time, you reply. He grins. Then you'll love this, one of the prince's ancestors? Famous for inventing a law about how far a librarian can throw a thief before the gods get mad. That one might be real. There's a footnote and everything. The palace gone. Calm returns. Almost. A week later, you receive a late-night delivery. A scroll wrapped in silk, bearing the seal of the royal astrologer. Inside is a single line. The heavens are satisfied. For now. Reassuring. You file the scroll under Cosmic Correspondence. Etrim adds an annotation, mood, vague, but approving. Back in your chamber, you lay on your woven mat, still slightly paranoid that the next audit will be from the gods themselves. Etrim peeks in, holding a cup of date beer. For surviving the royal retcon. You raise yours in reply. To strategic negotiation. And somewhere, in some dusty shelf of forgotten oaths, a scribe from 900 years ago smirks in approval. You're brushing clay dust off your robe when a runner from the temple stumbles into the library, red-faced, sweaty, and clutching a badly rolled tablet. There's been a mix-up, he gasps. The gods are upset. Oh no, not again. Apparently, someone returned a copy of the Hymns of Nana with a chicken curry recipe etched over half the verses. The temple priests are furious. Nana, the moon god, is not known for his patience or for enjoying culinary experimentation in sacred spaces. Etrim peers at the offending tablet. That's a pretty decent recipe though. Bit heavy on coriander. You sigh. Another crisis to clean up. You set off to the Temple of the Sacred Syllables. A long, echoing corridor of cool stone and judgmental priests. The head scribe, an elderly man named Abe Shah, frowns the moment he sees you. This is sacrilege, he hisses. Nana's verses defiled by stew instructions. You start to explain that the tablet likely came from a local tavern's lending shelf, where poetry doubles as placemat, but Abe Shah cuts you off. We demand restitution. Either recover the original hymn or perform it yourselves. Perform? Etrim nudges you. Can I play the lyre this time? You glare. Reluctantly, you agree. You and Etrim spend the next day preparing for what's probably the first ever performance of the Hymns of Nana and the accidental chicken recipe. The audience is mostly temple officials. Arms folded, eyes narrowed. You begin, slow, reverent tones invoking the moon's glow. Etrim chimes in with the melody, gentle, twangy, slightly off-key. Then the error stanza. Instead of skipping it, you lean in. With total sincerity, you intone. O silver disk of purity, shine on thy humble servant's spiced poultry. There's a moment of stunned silence. Then a chuckle. Then laughter. Even Abe Shah stifles a smile. Historians still argue whether that performance was a blasphemy or a breakthrough in culinary hymnology. Etrim later remarks. You're forgiven. Barely. To prevent future mix-ups, a new decree is issued. No secular recipes on sacred texts, a rule that, apparently, had never been formally written down before. Back at the library, you and Etrim develop a tablet tagging system. Color-coded wax seals to indicate category. Red for religious, blue for legal, green for recipes, and yellow for miscellaneous, which somehow includes dream journals, farming tips, and 2 entire volumes of sheep names. You also begin offering retraining sessions to scribes who tend to wander off-topic mid-tablet. One young trainee, asked to copy a hymn to Ishtar, managed to insert a 300-word rant about how his neighbor's goats were encroaching on his garden plot. Etrim prints it out for personal amusement. This is why we can't have nice oaths. Meanwhile, the incident with the temple sets off a small but passionate debate among local scholars. Some argue that every text has multiple purposes and that ancient scribes often mixed the sacred with the mundane. Others believe strongly that poetry should remain poetry, not turn into poultry. The debate spills into taverns, university halls, even the royal garden, where the prince reportedly quips, "If a god can't handle a little chicken, perhaps he should skip dinner." The priesthood is not amused. Still, you sense a shift. More scribes start adding footnotes, marginalia, and humorous little drawings. Tiny cows wearing hats, angry vegetables, sarcastic sun gods. You suspect Etrim started the trend. A strange harmony emerges. The serious coexists with the silly, the sacred with the scribbled. You begin to see the library not just as a repository of knowledge, but as a living, breathing scroll of humanity, flawed, playful, chaotic, reverent. One evening, while reorganizing the lost and found tablets, which includes such hits as My Uncle Owes Me Barley and Who Stole My Goat Again, you stumble upon a fragment in an unfamiliar script. You study it. Etrim studies it. No one can fully decipher it. Looks ancient, he says, older than the rest. You send it to a visiting linguist, who later returns with wide eyes. This might be a proto-tablet, she whispers, from before libraries were formal things. The fragment reads something like, "Gather the words, Store them safe. For the winds forget but clay remembers. You copy it onto a new tablet and place it at the front of the archive. Etram adds also keep recipes on the correct shelf. That night, you lie awake thinking about the fragment, about the long chain of librarians before you, about how many generations it took for someone to decide knowledge was worth hoarding, worth indexing, worth preserving for people who hadn't even been born yet. You drift off to sleep with a smile, only to be jolted awake by Etram's voice. I just found a poem about tax audits in the love sonnets. Of course he did. You were once again elbow-deep in clay shards trying to piece together a mystery. This time it's a broken record of livestock levies, but half the tablet is written in riddles. Etram leans over your shoulder. Why would someone encode a sheep census in poetry? You sigh. To make the scribes suffer, obviously. This, you think, might be your final straw. After weeks of reorganizing mislabeled scrolls, training apprentice scribes who confuse barley tallies with battle epics, and preventing another temple scandal, this time involving a haiku about fish stew carved onto a prayer tablet, you're ready for a break. But the gods and the books have other plans. Today, you're scheduled to audit the Royal Archive Annex, a place so old and dusty that spiders have their own cataloging system. You trudge across the city. The annex sits low and square, half swallowed by vines and bureaucracy. Inside, it smells like time and mildew. Scrolls are stacked like firewood. Some are tied with vines. Some are held shut with bone. The caretaker, an elderly woman with eyebrows like broom bristles, hands you a key. Don't open the blue door. You blink. Why not? She shrugs. Just don't. Naturally, you open the blue door. It's a small room, surprisingly clean. A single pedestal in the center. Upon it, a sealed clay tablet the size of a large loaf of bread. No markings. No title. Just one sentence scratched into the pedestal base. To be opened when the library forgets itself. You stare. Etram, of course, touches it. Feels warm. The pedestal creaks. You both take a nervous step back. Nothing happens. Back at the main library, the mystery stirs debate. No one knows who placed the tablet or what it might contain. Some believe it's cursed. Others think it's a prank from centuries ago. Historians still argue whether the library forgetting itself was metaphor or warning. Etram muses, sketching the seal onto his sleeve. Could be symbolic. Could be apocalypse. You shelve it under unknown, do not touch seriously. And yet that phrase haunts you. When the library forgets itself, you begin to notice small lapses. One scribe forgets the dewy-stamped order of deities. A shelf labeled agriculture now holds love letters and divorce settlements. Someone files an entire collection of flood myths under weather. The library is fraying, softly, slowly, like parchment in rain. So you double down. You restore index logs. You retrain everyone on the difference between goat complaints and goat metaphors. You institute tablet timeouts for repeat offenders. And each night, you light a small oil lamp and walk the stacks. Quietly, carefully, you begin to speak to the shelves. You remind them who they are. You are the memory of barley. You are the voice of Namu. You are the ledger that outlived the king. Sometimes the wind through the bricks sounds like it's whispering back. You catalog the last few rogue returns. A marriage contract repurposed as a dartboard, a war treaty scribbled over with fish jokes, and reflect on what it all means. Your job has never really been about late fees. It's about holding space for memory, for absurdity, for the gentle chaos of humans trying to say, I was here, I mattered, please remember. Etram interrupts your reverie with a wild-eyed announcement: the goats have eaten the accounting shelf. Again? You dash over. Sure enough, gnawed edges, hoof prints, the faint scent of rebellion. You make a note to upgrade security. Maybe a librarian cat. Eventually, word of your meticulous, slightly unhinged commitment spreads. The prince visits. Impressed. He names you head archivist of all that is, was, or might be scribbled. It's not a real title, but it looks great on your tablet signature. Visitors from distant cities come to tour the library. Students study your index system. Priests grudgingly admit that maybe it's helpful to separate chicken recipes from sacred verse. You even start training the next generation of librarians. One small girl asks, do you ever get bored? You smile. Only when the gods aren't misbehaving. That night, as you lock up, you pass the sealed tablet again. You don't touch it, but you whisper, "We haven't forgotten yet." And maybe, just maybe, it hums. The torches along the library walls grow dim. The scribes have packed away their tools. Etram's singing softly, off-key, as he files the last of the day's chaos. Outside, a breeze carries the scent of baked clay and crushed herbs. You sit on the temple steps. Your body aches, but your heart feels full. Above you, stars begin to stitch themselves across the sky, quiet, steady dots in the darkness. Each one a pinprick of memory, ancient and flickering. The city exhales. The goats settle. Even the scrolls seem to rest. You let yourself breathe slower now. Let the day's noise melt away. Let the laughter and the lectures and the misfiled gods drift into soft forgetfulness. It's okay to forget a little, because somewhere, in a quiet room of stone and wax and hope, you remembered enough. You remembered why people write, why they risk cuneiform paper cuts to tell each other about taxes or kings or how to roast the perfect duck. And you remembered that every absurd little record is an act of love. A breadcrumb trail for those still to come. The air cools. Your eyelids grow heavy. The last thing you hear before sleep is Etram muttering, "Did someone file poetry under poultry again? Let it go. You've done enough. Sweet dreams, librarian."